Have you ever stared at your phone, heart pounding, crafting a long emotional text to your avoidant ex, hoping that this time if you just explain yourself clearly enough, they'll finally get it? Maybe even come back. If that's where you are right now, stop, take a breath, and don't send it. Hey, I'm Jim Rohn, and in this video, I'm going to walk you through the real reason why sending that emotional message to your avoidant ex doesn't just go unread, it backfires. Not because your feelings aren't valid, but because the way avoidant people are wired makes them withdraw from intensity, not lean into it. I get it. When someone pulls away without closure, your instinct is to seek connection. You want to clarify, to be understood, to restore the bond you once had. That's not desperate, it's human. But when your ex is emotionally avoidant, emotional messages often feel overwhelming to them, no matter how heartfelt or sincere they are to you. In this video, we'll unpack what's really happening in their nervous system, why your texts might be met with silence, and how to respond in a way that protects your dignity and your power. I'll also give you practical psychology-backed insight into what a secure response actually looks like, and why it has nothing to do with over-explaining your emotions to someone who's already checked out. Because the goal isn't just to get a reaction, it's to get your self-respect back. So if you've been ghosted, breadcrumbed, or left hanging in emotional limbo by an avoidant ex, stay with me. This video will give you the clarity you need not just to stop texting them, but to finally stop abandoning yourself. And if you're ready to start choosing emotional peace over emotional panic, hit subscribe and let's get into it. Let's talk about that moment. You're sitting alone, heart-aching thoughts spiraling, and you find yourself reaching for your phone. Maybe it's been a few days or weeks since the breakup. Maybe they ghosted you. Maybe they pulled away without really explaining why. Either way, there's a part of you that thinks, if I could just tell them how I feel, maybe they'd understand. Maybe they'd come back. That impulse is human. When love feels suddenly ripped away, when you're left with no closure, your nervous system panics. You reach for what's familiar. You want to restore connection, so you start typing. A text that says, I still love you, or I wish we could talk. Maybe even a full emotional confession, telling them how much they meant to you, how hurt you are, how you're willing to work things out. But here's the truth, sending that emotional text to your avoidant ex won't bring them closer. It will only push them further away. Avoidants don't bond through emotional intensity, they retreat from it. Your text might be sincere, even beautiful, but to an avoidant, especially one who's already deactivated and emotionally withdrawn, it will feel like pressure. It reminds them of the closeness they ran from, and instead of opening their heart, they'll shut the door even tighter. Now let's look at what that text does to you, because this part matters more than you think. When you send that message, what you're actually doing is abandoning your own emotional boundaries. You're signaling to your subconscious that it's okay to reach for someone who isn't reaching back. You're teaching yourself that chasing is a form of love, and that's dangerous, especially if you already struggle with anxious attachment. What you truly want isn't to be heard by your ex, it's to be held, reassured, chosen. But an avoidant ex, particularly one who ended the relationship without real emotional presence, is not emotionally available to meet those needs. So every time you press send, you're setting yourself up for more silence, more confusion, more pain. And let's be honest, how many times has an emotional text to an avoidant ex actually ended with the outcome you wanted? Rarely, if ever. Because avoidants don't reconnect through words, they reconnect, if they ever do, through space-time and their own decision to face their discomfort. No text from you can accelerate that process, and more often than not, the only thing your message does is affirm to them that they still have emotional power over you. That's why the better, more grounded approach is no contact, not as a manipulation tactic, but as a form of self-respect. No contact says, I'm not going to try to earn someone who walked away. I'm not going to keep opening my heart to a closed door. I love myself too much to chase someone who's emotionally unavailable. It's not easy. In fact, it can feel agonizing at first, especially if your inner child is craving closeness, especially if you've been conditioned to think that love must be fought for. But here's the healing truth. Real love doesn't need to be begged for. If they were capable of loving you in the way you needed, they wouldn't have left without emotional clarity. And if they come back, it won't be because you poured your pain into a paragraph. It'll be because they faced themselves. Until then, your job is not to get them back. Your job is to get you back. The version of you who knew how to self-soothe, who had joy in your routines, who poured into your friendships, your work, your creativity. The version of you who didn't need to prove your worth to someone emotionally unavailable. Every time you resist the urge to send that emotional text, you build a new kind of muscle emotional dignity. And that's what actually rewires the pattern. Not the hope of reunion, but the decision to choose yourself. So the next time your finger hovers over that send button, ask yourself this. Am I reaching out from love or from fear? Am I trying to express myself or trying to rescue someone who already let go? Then take a breath, put the phone down, and walk back to yourself. Because healing starts not with a reply, but with silence that honors your worth. Now let's go deeper into why sending an emotional text to your avoidant ex often does the opposite of what you hope it will do. Because understanding their psychology, not just your pain, is essential if you want to stop repeating this cycle. Avoidant individuals, especially those with dismissive avoidant or fearful avoidant attachment styles, often carry a hidden emotional blueprint shaped by early childhood experiences. On the surface, they may seem independent, detached, or even cold. But underneath that exterior is a person who likely grew up with chronic emotional neglect where love meant performance vulnerability was punished or ignored, and emotional needs were treated like weaknesses. This kind of upbringing plants a deep shame wound, a belief that being emotionally seen will eventually lead to criticism, rejection, or abandonment. So to survive, they learn to shut down their feelings, to be self-reliant, to avoid emotional depth even in adult relationships. Now fast forward to today, you've gone through a breakup, you're hurting, and you want clarity, connection, or maybe even a path back. So you write that long emotional text. You think, if I just speak from the heart, maybe they'll see how much I care. Maybe they'll finally understand. But what actually happens in their nervous system? They don't read your vulnerability as warmth. They read it as pressure. That heartfelt message, the one you spent hours writing, is interpreted as an emotional demand. To them it feels like, you're asking me to engage with feelings I've spent my whole life trying to avoid. Instead of drawing them closer, your emotional expression activates their defenses. And that's when they do what they always do, they shut down. Some avoidants will ghost you completely. Others will respond with cold detachment or a neutral thanks for sharing a response that feels worse than silence. Internally, they're likely rationalizing. See, this is why we broke up. It's too much. I can't give them what they need. Rather than leaning into reflection, they protect their shame by disconnecting further. Because facing your pain would mean facing their impact. And most avoidants aren't emotionally equipped to do that. This is why sending an emotional text doesn't just fail. It often cements the breakup in their mind. It confirms their fear, that intimacy equals obligation. That closeness comes with emotional overwhelm. That getting back together would mean being pulled into a space they never felt safe in to begin with. What's even more painful is how this can lead to self-blame on your end. When your heartfelt message is ignored, you might spiral into thoughts like, maybe I pushed too hard, maybe I was too needy, maybe I should have said it differently. But the reality is, it wouldn't have mattered how carefully you worded it. Their emotional wall was already up, and your message just bumped against it. Worse still, chasing after an avoidant after they've pulled away gives them what they want, even if unconsciously. Avoidants are often terrified of closeness, but also deeply afraid of being the bad guy. So when you send that emotional text, it relieves them of guilt. They still want me. I guess it's not that bad then. They don't have to face consequences for their emotional shutdown. They don't have to examine their avoidant behavior, because you're still there, still reaching, still waiting. This keeps the emotional playing field deeply imbalanced. One person stays activated, trying to fix, reconnect, explain. The other stays deactivated, dodging, avoiding, and silently benefiting from the space they created. But here's the hard truth. No one has ever built emotional safety with an avoidant ex by sending a vulnerable essay after being discarded. Love doesn't grow through emotional chasing, and empathy doesn't come through pleading. It comes when someone is willing to face their own discomfort, and most avoidants can't do that unless they feel the emotional consequence of their distance. Which means your silence speaks more than your pain ever could. When you stop reaching out, you create the space where they have to sit with their decisions. You shift the dynamic. You stop soothing their guilt and start respecting your own wounds. And that's when the healing actually begins.
So the next time you feel the urge to send that heartfelt message, ask yourself, do I want to connect with them, or do I just want relief from this pain? Because true relief doesn't come from a reply. It comes from choosing yourself when someone else didn't. Let's talk about one of the most powerful yet most misunderstood tools you have after a breakup with an avoidant ex: no contact. Now, I know that phrase alone can trigger some resistance, especially if you're someone with an anxious attachment style. You've been conditioned to believe that love is earned through effort, closeness, and emotional openness. So the idea of going silent, of not reaching out, not explaining, not making one last plea, can feel like giving up, like losing, like surrendering something precious. But here's the truth. No contact is not about punishment. It's about protection, your protection. And more than that, it's about shifting the emotional dynamic from one-sided effort to equal responsibility. When you go no contact with an avoidant ex, what you're really doing is allowing them to feel the natural consequence of their behavior, the loss of your presence. Not out of revenge, not to manipulate, but because the relationship has reached a point where connection no longer feels emotionally safe for you. You see, when someone avoids emotional closeness, when they pull away without accountability, when they discard you without empathy, there needs to be a cost to that behavior. If you continue to chase, text, reach out, or over-explain, you're unintentionally removing that consequence. You're teaching them that they can deactivate, disappear, or avoid emotional labor and still have access to you. And for avoidance, that's the emotional comfort zone distance without accountability. No contact changes that. It says, if you want access to me, you have to come forward. You have to own your part. You have to show up differently. Now let's be clear, no contact won't magically change them. It's highly unlikely that an avoidant ex will suddenly have a complete emotional transformation during silence, unless they've already been doing serious inner work. But what no contact can do is interrupt the emotional pattern. It breaks the cycle where you overfunction and they underfunction, where you pursue and they pull away. It gives you the space to stop bleeding energy into someone who wasn't emotionally meeting you and redirect that energy inward toward your own healing. And make no mistake, the benefit of no contact isn't just what it tells them, it's what it tells you. It reminds you that you have agency, that you don't have to prove your worth through effort, that you're not responsible for teaching someone how to love you, that you are allowed no entitled to step back from dynamics that are hurting you, even if you still care deeply. Most people break no contact, not because they miss their ex, but because they can't tolerate the emotional discomfort of silence. It feels like abandonment. It triggers childhood wounds. But learning to sit with that discomfort without trying to fix it through someone else is exactly what heals your nervous system. It's how you build emotional regulation, self-trust, and secure attachment. And here's something important: avoidance often needs space to feel anything at all. When you're constantly present through texts, emotional check-ins, or apologies, they don't have the opportunity to reflect. Because you're still there even if the relationship is over. They never have to sit in the full weight of your absence. And without that space, growth is unlikely. But when you go no contact, not in a spiteful way, but in a grounded, self-protective way, you create a vacuum. And vacuums do two things. They either stay empty, or they invite someone to fill the space if they're ready. If they don't come forward, that tells you everything you need to know. If they do, but without accountability or change, that's still clarity. But if they do show up with emotional responsibility, then and only then can you evaluate whether reconnection is safe rather than begging for it blindly. So if you're struggling with silence, if you're fighting the urge to break no contact, pause and ask yourself, am I acting from fear or from self-respect? Am I trying to relieve my anxiety or reinforce my boundaries? Because the most secure thing you can do after an avoidant breakup isn't to chase. It's to protect your heart with silence that says, my love is not available to those who abandon me. That is the message no contact sends. And that is why it works not to get them back, but to get you back. Let's take a moment to step back and really integrate what this journey has been about, because what you're dealing with isn't just a breakup. It's a pattern, a cycle. And if you've ever been in love with someone avoidant, you already know how painful, confusing, and disorienting that cycle can be. But that pain isn't where your story ends, it's where your clarity begins. Here's what I want you to take away from everything we've talked about. 1. Sending emotional messages to an avoidant ex doesn't bring you closer, it reinforces the very dynamic that hurt you. I know it's tempting. You feel something heavy inside: grief, confusion, longing, and your first instinct is to release it, to reach out, to be understood. That's a normal emotional response. But when you send that long text or heartfelt message to an avoidant who's already pulled away, you're not opening a door, you're walking straight into a wall. Avoidants don't respond well to emotional intensity. They retreat, rationalize, or shut down. And in doing so, they confirm your worst fear, not because your message wasn't beautiful, but because they're not emotionally equipped to hold it. Every time you chase, plead, or re-explain, you're not just reaching for them, you're also sending a signal to yourself: I need to earn love. And that belief is where healing begins. Because it's not true. Love isn't earned through over-functioning. Real love meets you. It stays. It sees you without making you beg. 2. No contact is not cold, it's clarity. It's how you come home to yourself. When you stop reaching out, stop performing for someone's attention, and stop chasing what's already let go, you create a radical kind of space. And in that space, you begin to heal. You begin to hear yourself again. Your energy comes back. Your focus shifts from why did they leave to why was I trying so hard to stay? That's not bitterness, that's awakening. Avoidants need to feel the weight of your absence, not the comfort of your continued availability. If they are ever to reflect, ever to change, ever to reconnect from a healthy place, it starts when they no longer have you as an emotional safety net they didn't earn. 3. Closure doesn't come from their words. It comes from your decision to stop needing them. One of the hardest truths to accept is this: many avoidant exes will never give you the closure you deserve. Not because you don't deserve it, but because they don't have the emotional capacity, empathy, or self-awareness to offer it, especially not when they're in a triggered state. You might get silence, or vague statements, or deflection, but rarely the depth or accountability your heart craves. So you must find closure through self-respect, through choosing not to wait, through letting the unanswered question be a full answer in itself, because the person who can abandon you emotionally is not the person meant to repair your heart. 4. The path forward is not about winning them back, it's about remembering your worth. And that's what this whole journey really comes down to, remembering that you are not here to prove your value to someone emotionally unavailable. You're here to protect your heart, honor your needs, and seek connection with people who can meet you emotionally, consistently, and with empathy. So what now? Now is the time to turn toward yourself, to pour energy into the things that ground you, your friendships, your passions, your growth. Now is the time to surround yourself with people who don't make you question whether you're too much, but celebrate the fact that you feel deeply. Because that depth, that capacity for love, it's not a liability, it's your gift. It just needs the right space to thrive. The truth is, healing from an avoidant discard isn't about forgetting them. It's about rebuilding you with stronger boundaries, deeper self-trust, and a new non-negotiable. I will not chase love. It will meet me. You don't need to send another text. You don't need to get the last word. You need to choose peace over panic. And trust that the love meant for you will never feel like emotional survival. Because when you stop trying to fix the unavailable, you make space for someone truly ready. And that's where real love begins.